Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. It's Saturday morning, pretty morning out, at least in upstate South Carolina it is. Pretty morning. Uh, we'll go ahead and get started. See if we have any questions on last week. The question was fueled by, excuse me, the discussion was fueled rather by a question someone had about the Valdez shooting. The parents or the families were suing the gun manufacturer and the video gaming company, and we talked about that, and we talked about the company using use of women as slaves or as avatars for sex objects, and Pastor went into that a little bit as well. So I don't recall the details of the discussion, but that was mainly what fueled what we talked about that particular day, last Monday. Anyone have anything they can think of, or any other questions for that matter that anything you may have run across this week? Any questions or comments?
It's not related to the most recent topic, but
Uh-huh.
just wanted to ask if anybody had seen there's apparently more uh, solar flares and more auroras or northern lights that are going to be much more active over the possibly this weekend and over next week. So the sun, I guess, is at its solar maximum, which is the sort of most active point in an 11-year-ish cycle. And that's this year, which is why some of these things are happening.
Nick, you bring up an interesting point. Is it just a coincidence, or are we? Is it the universe a lot more active than it has been in the last few years? I guess because I also read something about a comet that's supposed to be headed our way. That's supposed to be very visible. So just been a lot of activity, rather. I won't call it chaos. I'll just call it activity. Is there just a lot more that we just paying attention to it more?
Well, the sun has cycles, uh, but I believe overall it's uh, the nature of our collective awareness is causing events to happen much more quickly and in more rapid succession, I believe. And that's in addition to the fact that uh, those things are happening, I believe, more frequently and more rapidly on their own. So it's like a little bit of a feedback loop between our own awareness, individually and collectively, as well as the planet, solar system, everything that sort of is directly affecting us energetically. And I think part of that has to do with just the way human beings are evolving together on this planet. And as we become more interconnected, uh, the more our thoughts as a sort of collective can become more aligned, which has itself a greater effect on our shared experience on this planet and in reality itself. So I think everything is speeding up in a way because our collective perception is uh, gaining a greater capacity to influence and be influenced by the energy that we create and are.
That's that's interesting. I don't part of what you're saying, I guess what I'm we have often talked about weather patterns, and weather patterns being indicative of what's going on in the earth as far as attitudes, as far as frustration, as far as the chaos and whatnot. Uh, do you suppose then that these weather patterns are becoming more universal? This is expanding in a way, or they're just a manifestation of man's attitudes and personality is expanding.
Excuse me. Honestly, I agree with Nick. However, I also believe that the Creator knows and knew the extent of our desires to understand who we are and where we will be at this point. Suppose for a moment that excuse me, our journey being guided by the energy of the universe has guided us to this place of interaction that Nick spoke of, and that with the energy from the sun, the solar flares, etc., are a message reminding us that we are on the righteous journey, and that all of the energy that is necessary for us to bring about change is available to us, always have been, but the flares gets our attention and shows us the availability of the energy. And I believe that the increased energy is directly is correlated with the depth of our desire to be this one entity in the earth for the benefit of humanity. And I can go into that a little bit further, a little bit later. But I'm seeing with that, because it's like when you buy a red car, you see red cars. You buy a Honda, you see Honda. You know what I'm talking about? They've
Yeah.
always been there, but you begin to notice them. And now the energy's always been there. It's getting our attention. Suppose also for a moment that the energy that we are experiencing, we would not have known what to do with it earlier, but now we do. We would not have known how to interact with it, but now we do. I firmly believe that, where most of you know that I've been reading quite a bit and I'm trying to understand Kemet, what happened in Kemet, or trying to, at the very least, uncover Kemet in me or in us. Kemet, uncovering Kemet has shown me that we are in constant contact with the energy of the universe. One of the writers gave an example saying that we are like bumper cars with the metal mesh on the floor and the mesh above us, and that little thing that touches the mesh above us that gives energy to the car for it to move. That's how we are in constant contact with the universe, with the energy of the universe. We're constantly receiving. But if you don't mass accelerate in a bumper car, you don't move. And if we don't have the desire, or if we're not searching for something in terms of ourselves or spirituality, then we're not aware of that connection, just like the bumper car not moving if you don't touch the accelerator. You have to do something. You have to be a part of activating the energy. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
And that in Kemet, they believe that there is no difference between our soul and spirit, and that our bodies don't carry our soul. Our soul carries our body, because we are one soul that has different aspects. And those different aspects rather, are housed within the confines of the body that we carry with us. And that is why we are different personalities. It is like you take the same engine parts and put it in a car, and you cover that car with a different skin. It looks different, it becomes a Buick. If you cover that car with something else, it becomes a Mazda. But all of the moving parts are the same. Our bodies are the same way. All the moving parts are the same. Yet the covering of those moving parts makes us different in terms of our existence in the universe. And we are at a place now where we are beginning to realize that there's absolutely nothing in this material world, in this earth realm, that should take priority over knowing who we are. We have known for quite some time that our primary objective for being in the earth is to discover ourselves. And at one time we had done that, and then we were pushed off track for various reasons, but the main purpose being for us to take inventory of how to become the true God of this earth. And now that we are in the process of embracing that, and I say process because we don't fully know how to embrace it yet. We're just learning how to strip ourselves of ego and become totally engrossed in the spiritual essence of who we are, meaning that we are not influenced. When I talk about ego, I'm talking about not being influenced by anything in this material world, but all of the influence being spiritual. We're just not learning how to do that. And learning to do that brings us to a clear space of being reflective of Elohim or Ra, either one you want to use, both are the same to me. And these solar flares are the source of energy that we see as being increased, that gives us increased wisdom and increased focus. So we will cease searching for happiness in the material world. Everything in this material world is guided by ego. And when we become the spiritual entities or essence of who we were created to be, then ego becomes our servant as opposed to our God. I'm done.
Questions, comments? Thank you, sir.
I would like some help.
Does anyone have anything to add?
The reason I solicit help is because I know what I see, but I know it's more than that to see. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Nick mentioned that the flares are wrapping up an 11-year cycle. Would someone address what that could possibly mean? I know we've talked about 11 as a gateway, but I'm wondering what that means in this context.
Said it.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're right. It's a cyclical opportunity is always present, but the energy that we are working with has cycles. And there are, I believe, if you know how to use it to sort of digest it in a sense, then it becomes that much more easy to affect change using that energy if you do it at the peak of the cycle. So there are all kinds of natural cycles and rhythms that we live within, and part of understanding yourself as an energetic being in a metaphysical sense is learning how to sense those influences that we exist within and how to use them. Or rather, maybe a better way to say it would be how to resonate in tune with them so that we allow them to help us do whatever it is we want to do. And I believe with our ability to sort of affect everything using our collective intent, then the energy that we are given to do that is just increased at this point in the cycle. But as I said, the opportunity is always there. It's just that there are points where it becomes easier if we know how to use what is available to us. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this solar maximum comes at a time when the United States is in such a transitionary period and is at such a, well, it's always been at it has been a huge influence over the world, but now we're at a point where we want that influence to noticeably shift in a much more positive direction, or potentially a much more negative one for, I would say, probably the near term future, whatever that ends up being. But I think that's the opportunity and the energy available to us in this time period.
I also think, Nick, that the conviction of Trump plays into that as a part of that. I really do. I believe that what we've talked about Trump being an expression of the underbelly of America in terms of his thought patterns and actions. And now that he has been weighed in the balance and found guilty, I think that's indicative of this whole country having been weighed in the balance and found guilty, because every aspect of his being is the nature of this country, that's the world. And I believe that we are seeing the death of this essence being convicted for everything it has done to it, to in a destructive way to the world, and is being put on a boat and sent to the Netherlands, never to be seen again. That's how I see this conviction. I don't see this just as a criminal conviction. I also see it as this attitude being labeled with the same stigma that they sought to label all of people of color. And that is the whole idea of a felony was brought into existence to minimize the effectiveness of Africans in particular in this country. And now that label of felon has been attached to the perpetuators of all these isms that have presented themselves as a detriment to people of color. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
We are in a very progressive space now. And my strong suggestion would be sit back and let the universe take its course as opposed to speculate and being afraid and trying to force change. It's obvious that the universe is at work. And it's so obvious because who would ever thought that someone as devious, corrupt, and connected as Trump would be convicted? He's a white man with money. That doesn't happen in this country. And we know it. He is an anomaly in that regard. So let's be grateful for the energy. And if you don't know what to do, don't try to make something happen. Just be still and know that you are Elohim. Be still. And let the universe continue what it is doing. Not only that, but also sit back and let the universe guide us in terms of what our thoughts ought to be and what our words ought to reflect, as opposed to trying to find out something that's going to grab the attention of the ones with whom we're speaking, or even trying to find something to change. We don't have to look for anything. We have already been found by what we were looking for. So let's sit back and embrace it and continue the discussions so that we can put it in the macro. I'm a firm believer that the things that we reflect verbally in our discussions has little, not very little, but little to do with us, but much more to do with the macro. The purpose of it all is for it to reverberate globally, as opposed to just knowing it, because it doesn't do any good for you to know something and not share it. I hope that makes sense to you guys.
It does.
Thank you. Well, let me wait. See if there's anyone else that has something to say.
Questions or comments, anybody? Pastor, I have a question unless you have somewhere else you want to go with this.
Well,
Okay. I like most of us on this phone, I suppose, I read a lot. And a couple of things I've read. I've read this article and I'm ordering her book. A lady talks about how to talk and how to listen to trees. And you know my fascination with trees. I talk about trees a lot. I talk about vegetation a lot because I think there's something there that we haven't seen yet. I won't say haven't discovered, we just haven't seen it yet. And that it really intrigued me. And I read further, and other people are talking about communing with nature, and people are starting to see the benefit of walking barefooted in the forest, in the grass, and touching trees and the plant life and all of these things. And I think all of these things are connected and even connected to us. People are talking about nature in general, the relationship with the sun, the planets, and it is no coincidence to me that I see this, and this is my opinion. Maybe they haven't looked at it this way. I see this as people searching for God, and they're doing it through the means that are available to them, that has been there all the time, that we have not quote unquote seen it this way. Uh, and what I mean is, I think people are becoming more feminine, and I say that to me, people are becoming more intuitive. If you say that people you are becoming more feminine, I think it sounds offensive to them because they think it means something else. But I think people are becoming more intuitive and listening to that and feeling the vibrations inside and searching for them. And I think it is also no coincidence that as this flow of humanity goes back to itself, people are leaving the church. And I don't think that's a coincidence. So I look at that, and I even I was looking at something someone wrote too about birds, and that's my fascination, because I think birds speak to us, and I like to delve more into that. But it's to most people, this will probably sound foolish, but I don't think the people on this phone, or at least I hope not, see it that way. Uh, because I think as we started the conversation off talking about the universe and signs that we see in the universe, I think what we're seeing is evidence of when we talk about putting things in the macro and why that is so important. And the things that people are searching for, people are grasping for truth, people are trying to feel those things, intuitive things, and find out the source of them. And so I think it's tied to what we do on this phone. And what are your thoughts on that? Have you given any thought to that? What are your thoughts there? Do you see how all of this ties together, or does it tie together to you?
I see it like that. That's tied. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say absolutely. As you, I think there's a number of things that's gonna happen as more and more people leave the church. Well, in the United States in particular, there's been a growing influence of the seeking out of spirituality, which, if you do not know what that is, the first place you start is nature. And there will also be, I think, a corresponding increase in people's sort of attachment to materialism. However,
Yeah.
I think the spirituality as a sort of wave moving through our collective awareness has been growing and will eventually keep growing. But it's absolutely connected. Like, that's instinctive. The experience and being present in nature is instinctive. It is the desire to connect with the natural world, which is the physical manifestation of spirit, which is where that instinct comes from. It is a desire to return to something that is more essentially natural to humanity. And the rate of spiritual growth increases when you recognize the need to return and the environment that is more conducive to that sense of return, even if you can't consciously identify it as spirituality. And nature is itself, the more you observe it, the more you see the cycles that are present within it. It causes a paradigm shift in the way you see your relationship to the universe.
Let me add this part, Nick, before you go on, because I want you to speak to this too. You and Pastor both we have one. There was also something this lady was talking about, and the funny thing about it too, and this could be coincidental, that a lot of the articles that I see are written by women. I don't know if that's a coincidence or not, but she was talking about healing and using the vibration of trees and nature for healing, because your cells have a limited lifespan, and they're constantly regenerating themselves. So why not regenerate themselves in the perfect vibration, because you have to know that you are part of all of this, all of nature. And if you seek that, if you become one with that, it can be used to heal the body and heal the spirit and heal the soul. And she even talked about mentally coming to a place of wellness. So add that into this conversation as well, please, if you don't mind.
We absorb energy in whatever environment we are in, whether we know it or not. And the natural environment is much more conducive to harmonious vibration, harmonious energy. And that energy has a natural healing effect. It starts when people say, if you want to improve your mental health, go take a walk or go be in nature. That is the sort of first place it is felt for most of us. But that is the beginning of that influence of the energy doing exactly that, bringing harmony to something that is in disharmony. So there's all kinds of sort of ancient traditions of being able to communicate with plants, trees, everything in nature, but in particular trees, who I forget, they were referred to as the standing people, I think, by it might have been a Native American group of people in the United States, but they're very much like resonators of natural energy, not in the least part because of the fact that they're big and they sort of resemble the plant version of people. Their configuration of energy is something that we can more readily resonate with if we are able to perceive and interact with the energy of that frequency. But that is possible with everything in nature. And the sort of original healing influence of the harmonious natural cycles and the energy present therein is what we have the ability to draw from, even if we don't know it, when we are present in those environments.
I agree with you, Nick. And when you think nature, when you talk about nature itself, the question to me was, where does it come from? And if we were to do an etymological search for the word nature, it would lead us to the Latin natural law or something like. Anyway, even the Latin comes from neter, neteru, which is God. Neter is the divine in Kemet. It refers to the divine supreme being in Kemet. Neter is a word that originated in Kemet. And what does it mean? Neter means divine, and neteru, when it speaks to the word from which nature came, means the manifestation of power, or the manifestation of the power of the divine. So nature itself is divine in its existence because of the energy that brought it into existence. And that is the reason that Imhotep was able to use nature to bring healing to the body. Natural minerals, natural vegetation. And if you think about that, the way it actually existed and exists, there was a period when you would go to a physician and you would be healed by what you received. And you were healed by it because it was a part of your body, just because it came directly from the earth. It was natural. However, when Europeans began to synthesize everything for the purpose of maintaining your illness as opposed to healing it, that is when the not only humanity but the earth itself became sick and remained sick. So I see very clearly the power in sitting with it in terms of focusing on the natural essence of everything and understanding that the regeneration of your cells is the very thing that heals constantly. And the deterioration of them is what makes you ill. And that, and even when you think about cancer, cancer is not, these cancer cells naturally appear in the body. But when they are out of balance, when they begin to reproduce more rapid than the body can dispose of them, that's cancer. However, when we are sitting with it and we are understanding we're one with this natural environment, and understand that there is no difference between the tree and the body, the physical body in terms of its existence, then we are more able to utilize the wisdom that's available to absorb the energy of existence itself that will indeed heal our bodies, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
And I think that Nick pretty much piggybacks on what you were saying. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
So this whole idea, the things that we are talking about now, there are those who would think that we're talking about hypotheticals, but we're not. We're talking about realities. We are not. We are talking more now about God than we have ever talked about God in religion. And the idea of separating our God from natural existence has always been the thing that has caused us to think that we can find ourselves in this natural world, in this material world, rather. There's nothing in this material world that can lead you to yourself. There is something in this material world that can induce you to search for yourself, but you will not find yourself in this material world because the you don't exist in this material world. You can only find you within because you are within you. And that this whole idea of nature and the trees and the grass, all of these things are within us. And they are actually guideposts to bring us not only to a place of unicity with this material world, but also to bring us to a place where we are the spiritual governors of this world in terms of making sure that it has a continued existence in an harmonious way. And that's what we are doing now. The reality of spirituality within actually, the reality of spirituality within actually comes from us realizing that there is no separation between us and anything that exists. We are the governors of it, but we are not separate from it, if that makes sense. We're one with it.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that we are sick a lot is because if you think about it, there was a period when the African were lived based on nuts, vegetables, and fruit. Now what we are dealing with is animals. Anytime you eat an animal, you are eating everything that an animal has eaten. And we don't know what they're being fed, so we're eating whatever they have eaten. There was a time when you could eat vegetables and be fine. But even now, because of the contamination in the earth, in the ground, you don't know what you're eating when you're eating vegetables. So all of these things that were brought into the earth to maintain the health of the body are now agents that has the potential of deteriorating the body. And that is why people are going back to planting their own gardens in their backyards, trying to recoup what was, trying to find a way to regenerate the reality of existence in this earth. And that in itself, as been stated earlier, is a search for God, when in essence, it's really a search for self. Because when you find God, you find you. I'm done. Oh, let me say this, if I may. Laugh at me. Go ahead, Audrey. You go ahead and speak. I yield to you.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I've been waiting. Going back to what you were talking about nature. When we think about the sun, S-O-N, versus the sun, S-U-N, it's the S-U-N that's the giver of life for all of nature. All plants, trees, whatever wouldn't exist without the light energy from the sun. So if you think about it like that, then when you are in nature, you are directly receiving that light energy that came from the sun. And because plants also give off a certain amount of oxygen, which we use to breathe, you're the receiver of that also. So nature itself is a life giver for us. So in that regard, you can almost regard nature as, and it is, God. So anyway, that's what I wanted to add.
It is. It's a manifestation of God. You're absolutely right. I wondered, why is it that we breathe 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen? And when CPR is administered, they give you oxygen and not nitrogen. I wonder why. Because nitrogen for some reason damages the tissue if there's a continuous exposure to it. But the body is water. Go ahead.
But also this nitrogen is used by plants
Yes,
in the form of nitrates.
right.
And there is much more of plants and nature than there is us.
Yes. And we expel nitrogen. That's the 70 that we inhale, we expel most of it. But the body uses the oxygen because oxygen is a part of water, oxygen, hydrogen. So the body is more apt to more able to utilize it for its existence. So what am I saying? I am saying that the breath itself is a manifestation of the power of God, and that power of God is showing us that we inhale the source, as Audrey stated, of nitrogen that enhances the growth of plants. It does not harm us because we expelled it with the carbon dioxide. And that same breath, that same spirit has within it the element that is necessary for us to live, this body to live rather, and that in itself is oxygen. So what I'm seeing in all of that is this: take away the body, and the only thing that's left is the breath, the spirit. That's the only thing that's left. Therefore, we are the life of everything in this earth. Nothing can live in this earth without spirit. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
So that being the case, then that means that it is impossible for any object or any, well, let me put it this way, anything, because everything on earth lives, that it is impossible for anything in this earth to separate itself from spirit, from God, from divinity. It is impossible. The only place, the only one rather, that can separate itself does it in his mind because you're delusional. And the more delusional you are, the more lonely you become. So people who feels like they are in this earth all by themselves are living in a material world in a state of delusion. If you really think about it, I think it was Kathy years ago who talked about in her research there was no word for loneliness in the scriptures because of the presence of God. Now that we see this clearer than we ever have, I'm saying that when we feel lonely, when we feel abandoned, when we feel like we have no one to turn to, it is because we are living in a world of delusion, in a deluded world rather, and that world of delusion that we're living in is our mental state as opposed to our spiritual essence. And you cannot feel the loneliness in your body if you are truly if you truly realize that your body is not you. You can't do that. You have to create an environment of loneliness in your mind in order for you to experience loneliness. Does that make sense so far? Oh,
It
y'all.
does. It does.
Yep.
So the idea of creating this environment of loneliness is inextricably tied to ego. And when we are able to see that this element called ego is the thing that seeks to keep us in a state of mental separation from our creator and from the essence of our being. Then it is then that we seek to rise above this I don't want to say rise above this state of what of the material body. Let me put it that way. And what that actually does is move us in the direction of finding ourselves. However, Christianity doesn't do that. Islam doesn't do that. Buddhism doesn't do that. None of them does that. Why? Because when we look at all of these isms, what do we see? We see the doctrine or the dogma of that. We see the rituals that we go through, but we do not see any experiences in that. If you think about all of the time that you spent in church, you were always inundated with what we believe in, the dogma. You were always involved in the ritual, communion, baptism, ushering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you never had an experience. And without an experience, dogma and ritual does not elevate you beyond where you are, meaning it keeps you in a state of loneliness, of aloneness in this earth. When you realize that your body is no thing when you leave it, not nothing, but no thing, because it has not taken another form yet. So it is no thing, it is simply a substance. When we realize that, we have a tendency then to give less credence or less attention to our bodies and more attention to who we really are. And in doing so, we have less periods in our lives when we go through these states of depression and loneliness and are on the verge of suicide or wondering why me? Why is it that I don't have anybody to turn to? Why is it that everybody treats me this way? When we see that we are God and truly believe that, there is no way that you can embrace the reality of being God and be lonely. There is no way that you can embrace the reality of being God and say, why me? Why not you? Everything that you don't want to happen to you is happening to you for you to take notice of who you are. And now, am I saying that I am in a state where I don't go through those things that I'm talking about? No, I'm not saying that at all. I am getting there. I am getting to the place where I am dominated, allow myself to be dominated by a desire to know and to live who I am, as opposed to being at times overwhelmed or inundated with these egotistical things that results rather in loneliness, that results in an idea of being abandoned. Because loneliness is just a cute way of saying that you feel like you have been abandoned. And if you feel like you have been abandoned, the question is, who abandoned you? Even if your family ceases to deal with you, then that's your family's problem, not yours. Even though you feel that it is a problem for you, when we see who we really are, that ceases to be as damaging as it can be or as it has been. Help me with this if you can. I hope it's clear. What I'm trying to say is that the reason we are never lonely, the reason we are never abandoned is not simply because of the androgynous deity that brought us into existence. It's because we are one. Meaning that if we are truly one, there is never a time when you're not with me and I'm not with you. because we are spiritually connected. Not only that, there is no way that we can spend periods in our lives of recognizing and reverencing our ancestors, or the ancestors, rather not Howard, but the ancestors, and feel that we have been abandoned. I want to suggest something. The moment that you feel lonely, the moment that you feel like you have been abandoned, the moment that you feel like no one cares, seek the presence of the ancestors and see how quickly all of that changes with you, because the ancestors' presence, the energy of the ancestors will show you very quickly that there is no such thing as loneliness. It is simply a method of mental separation from the essence of spirituality. And in order for us to be the balance that's necessary for the earth, we cannot afford to live in in an environment of believing that we have been abandoned. I'm done. I hope I didn't confuse you. I can see it in my head sometimes, but it's more difficult for me to articulate what I see.
I
So
just want to add that most of our experiences, you talk about experiences and feeling lonely, but a lot, I won't say most, a lot of the experiences are shared. And what do I mean by that? You can see something that happened to somebody you've never met, and it invokes that experience. It awakens your feelings and emotions of sympathy or love or compassion, or it is not always your experience that brings that about, I guess is what I'm saying. So a lot of times it is something that is shared, uh, and how you deal with it from there, I guess, is what can bring about the loneliness part. But I like the suggestion about invoking the ancestors to kind of help ease that, because at the time it is real. Any experience is going to bring about some type of feeling. So, and that is very real. So, I can see how that could be overpowering to us. I just want to say that a lot of times they're shared. It's not just something that you might be experiencing.
And let me say, we're in no way suggesting that those feelings are like that you should deny them or try to suppress them, but rather, ultimately, at the core of our sense of self, there is a certain ignorance of the true nature and of our connection to all things, including the ancestors, etc. And the more you can uncover that, well, the more you can sort of realize what is present within you, the more that fills that space or that gap that you perceive as loneliness or disconnection. It is a difficult process, but ultimately, the feeling of disconnection and loneliness is one that is created by our own ignorance in a way. And that is not to say, as I said, that you should pretend it's not there. Deal with it in the way that you best can, but that ultimately the solution to it is spiritual. Ultimately, in the core of your awareness and sense of self is the solution to all feeling of disconnection. And it is, as we said, not, these are realities we are speaking about,
yes,
not what hypothetical, metaphorical situations or ideas, in terms of what it is you experience and how you can heal and learn to draw from, in a conscious way, the energy that we are connected to, the energy that we are. Anyway, thank you. Well, let me finish. It is we're not suggesting to treat it as how you would treat it in church, or how it has been treated in church, where they say, oh, you just don't know Jesus well enough or whatever. That's why you're depressed. No, you're actually depressed.
Yes,
But the solution to it ultimately is to go within the self, to understand the nature of that depression in terms of why it arises within you, and to know that there's much more present within you that can fill and heal and balance and harmonize that disharmony and the source of it within you. Thank you.
you know what I found ironic? Thank you, Nick, because there's no way we're saying that it doesn't exist. So I'm not dealing with how to deal with it. We talk a lot about, well, we constantly talk about finding self from within, because that's where we are. And we talk about selfishness. There is a huge difference in finding self within and being selfish. Those are huge differences. When you search for the truth can only be found within the confines of spirituality, not in this material world. And there is no way for you to find yourself, find who you are, and be selfish. Selfish is an external thing. Selfishness is engendered by what you see with your eyes as opposed to what you experience with your soul. Finding self is an experience, a spiritual experience that obligates you, that propels you to a desired place where you are more concerned about the healing of humanity than you are about the acquisition of things for yourself. You're not even concerned about accolades when you find yourself. Your concern is humanity. Selfishness is an external environmental thing created by men that is reflected in your desire to have everything to go your way and for you to have everything that you want when you want it, without regard to how it has an adverse effect on humanity. Does that make sense? Those things are there's a thin line between them, but there is a huge difference. I'm done. I don't think I'm gonna talk anymore today. I'm gonna listen.
Yes, y'all, because I have a question. And anything though to what we just talked about before I go into something else. Nick, did you have a follow-up? I saw you.
Oh, sure.
I saw that look on your face.
There is and this comes out of the law of one, which I've spoken about, but there is a statement that says when you, I'm paraphrasing, but when you awaken truly to the true understanding, awareness, and knowledge of who and what you are, that is when you become the servant of all things. And that is because all things are one. When you help others, you are quite literally helping yourself. But it is not done with the selfish intent, like we just spoken about. It is done with in the small ego sense of selfishness. It is done with the knowledge that all things are you and you are all things. And that when you seek to be a servant in whatever way anything that is not you needs help. You are healing the universal self, which is the expression of the creator in material existence. Thank you.
In addition to that, Nick, when we talk about knowing thyself, right? What are we saying? Know what's in your heart. If you don't know what's in your heart, you don't know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, you will never be awakened spiritually. You have to know is it love and kindness? Yes. Or is it greed? If that's in your heart, then you purge yourself of that. And that begins the journey to spiritual awareness. That begins the awakening of your spiritual nature. Does that make sense? So this whole idea of knowing thyself is talking about knowing what's in your heart, knowing what the rudiments of your desires are. What is it that you truly desire? That's knowing yourself. The idea, when we talk about as above, so as below, Jesus, that was attributed to Jesus as well, when he said that thy will be done in heaven as it is in earth, that in earth rather as it is in heaven. That in itself is as above, so is below. So all of these things of religion that has kept us arm's length away from spirituality by virtue of telling us who we are, as opposed to us finding out who we are, knowing ourselves, knowing what's in our hearts. You trying to tell me what's in my heart. You trying to tell me that that if these things that you have taught me are not in my heart, then I'm going to hell, or I'm a bad person. No. Know what's in your heart. If your heart hate white people, then you need to purge yourself, because what's that in your heart will not allow you to be awakened to spiritual reality. You will never find truth until you are purged of that. You have to deal with what's in your heart before you can even dream about encountering truth. Does that make sense? Knowing what's in your heart. You have to know what's in your heart. Don't try to know what's in James Rich's heart. The way you will know what's in my heart, maybe, or at least some of it, is how I respond to others, not to you, but to others. Because the expectation is we are close. And I'm going to respond to you regardless. But how do I respond to that person who I don't know? How do I respond to that person who walks up to me and tells me, I just got out of prison and I have bodies on me, and I'm a changed person, I just want to talk to you? How do I respond to that person? Do I respond to them in church like you're a criminal and you shouldn't be in here? Do I respond to them in a manner that will allow them to truly know, not just believe, but know I am willing to walk this journey with them to help them become who they're supposed to be? Or am I the religious person who's saying, Jesus gonna handle this, I need to pray for you, and nothing ever changes? Those are the decisions that we have to make. Are we going to be religious, or are we going to be spiritual? I'm done. I think, well, I'm not gonna say anything because somebody will ask the question, make me talk. But I'm done for now.
Any questions or comments on what's been said, y'all? Anybody? I have a lot of faith and belief in the energy that we generate on this phone. That's important to me personally, and I think to the universe. We talked about something earlier. We're talking about the earth being poisoned, and we talked about the things that animals eat and we end up eating. We didn't mention this, but we talked about the how seed is being tampered with and whatnot. How do we heal the earth? Let's bring that up. What do we do to heal the earth? What do we do to change all of that? To change the the vegetation and to help the trees and the plant life and the seeds that we eat and the animals that we eat. Let's add that to this for just a second and
Well,
put it
before
out
we do
there
that,
as well. Yeah.
before we do that, let me, what I see this morning is that we are talking about the work, describing the work and how to do the spiritual work. Because, and I believe that's necessary because we are entering tumultuous times. And the tumultuous times are not just what's happening politically, it's also what's happening unnaturally. Look at what's happening in Texas. You know, a hailstorm dropped the temperature 40 to 50 degrees in a few minutes. Those kinds of things. And tomorrow you got a heat wave. And then the next day you have torrential rains with straight line winds that's tearing everything up. The next day you got tornadoes. All of this is in Texas. Why? So we are headed, we are in these tumultuous times. And what we are talking about pretty much is if you cannot handle what's in you and know who you are, you cannot be an answer to these tumultuous times. So now let's go to what you're asking, Ron.
Okay. Any questions about that first? Anybody, does that make sense? What Pastor just asked? Add, excuse me. Okay.
Yes, yes, I'd say it does because, in a sense, we are the virus that the earth is trying to get rid of because we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. If you want to use a metaphor for it. So yes, it makes a lot of sense.
Thank
I was going to add that
you.
we heal the earth by healing ourselves,
There you go.
and it's everything's been talked about earlier. Until we know ourselves, you know, the Bible verse that talks about the earth just groans for us to get it together, because we are the creator, and
Barbara,
if the creator, yes,
no, I was
if the
going to ask you to
creator
repeat what you
doesn't-
said. That's yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. The earth groans for us to get it together because we are the creator, and if the creator doesn't know, understand, or is fully aware that it is the creator, how can it create? In other words, how can it set things in order? How can it balance things? Balance has to do with what's internal as well as external. Well, if I'm not balanced internally, and again, these are back to the basic principles of the universe, basic principles of Maya. If we aren't balanced internally, then what's happening in Texas expresses that lack of balance internally. And even though a group of people in the faith ministries are getting to the point more and more and more that we are becoming balanced and know that we are balanced, there are so many more that are out there that don't know it. And so this helps keep the chaos going. But I believe that because we are more in tune, that worse things are not happening that could be happening. Worse things are preempted because of where we are and what we think and what we know, what we perceive, what we do, what we act upon at a spiritual level. And so it's just showing that until I get it together within me, it's difficult for me to know that I'm you, because I don't even know me, if that resonates.
It does.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly that we provide the balance. And if you remember back during COVID, and I think also the earth will heal itself. The earth will take care of itself. Because if we're saying the very presence, the very nature is an aspect of God, then the earth will take care of itself. If you remember back during COVID, when we got our unbalanced selves out of the way, the earth did fine. All the smog cleared up, and you know, you remember those things, all those things that happened. The earth cleared up,
Yeah.
animals started to roam again, all that kind of stuff was going on. So the earth will take care of itself. We just got to get in balance. So yeah,
Well, we are the gods that the earth, is reflective of the power of the gods in the earth, or it is reflective of the weakness of the gods in the earth. And as I just said, when the gods got out of the way because they didn't know they were gods, everything, the earth healed itself. If you reverse that, and the gods know who they are, then the energy in the earth will also heal the gods. The body will be healed by the earth if the gods recognize who they are. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I like that. Hadn't thought of that.
It's like healing comes from the gods, or detriment comes from the gods, right? It's like I was talking to Ron earlier, and I said to him, suppose I tell you that black is not a color. And the reason black is not a color is because black produces colors. It's not that black absorbs all colors. Black releases all colors. So black is not a color. It is the maker of colors. So the earth, the healings rather, if we are the source of life itself in the earth, because we are gods in the earth, when we are unaware of the life that we are, and we begin to act contrary to who God is, the earth gets sick. And it gets to the place where the earth when Barb talked about the earth mourning, waiting for us to know who we are, that mourning is reflective in what's happening in Texas. However, that we have been shown what can happen when we become aware of the divinity that we represent in this earth, or the divinity that we are in this earth. When we recognize that divinity that we are in this earth, that is when we are able to see the changes. For example, when we started talking about the hurricanes that were hitting South Carolina and no more, what did we do? The universe recognized that, embraced that, and chose to show us the wisdom of what we were saying by virtue of hurricanes bypassing South Carolina. Now, the universe is saying to us, I have shown you that wisdom. I have shown you the wisdom of hurricanes bypassing South Carolina because you desired that. It is, you are the one who did that. Now, expand on that. If you can do that in South Carolina, you can do it exponentially, meaning that it is not just the weather that you need to be dealing with, because the weather is the way it is as a result of the ineptness of those who don't know who they are. Simply because you have been able to do it in South Carolina, I'm saying to you, that can be done any place on this earth, any place in this universe, because when you begin to process in terms of being global as opposed to processing in terms of being localized, that is when the same energy that you used to build that fence around South Carolina, that same energy can bring order to the whole world, because order in the world begins with order, as Bob said, in you. I'm done with that part, I think. Questions about that, comments? Is it clear?
Yes.
It is clear. Any other questions or comments, guys?
Well,
Are
I'm
we ready to
done.
put a poll?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I
Yeah.
can meant to say, Ron. Yeah.
Well, it's a good place to stop, and let's reflect on this and pick up tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, guys.
You too now.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you.